Hello everyone, welcome back to Salesforce Predator. Today we are going to look into future methods and discuss some important questions that are asked on it in any Salesforce developer interviews. So let's start with it. What is the use of future method? Future methods are used in scenarios where you would want to run any operation in its own thread. Okay, so for example, consider processing of some records or making some external callouts to third-party services whose result is not required for other operations in your code to continue. Okay, so what you will do, you will put that code part into a separate method, and that is future method, which will make it execute in its own thread. Okay, so let's understand it better. We can go to our developer console. Consider this class. What I'm doing in this class is making some callout to third party and then inserting an account object. Okay, now there is no relation between these two parts of a code. Let's say this insert operation on account does not require response from this callout. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll put this callout in a separate method and make it as future. Now, important point here to remember is Apex code always executes in a synchronous mode unless it is specified. Okay, so what will happen is, and what does that mean is, whenever control comes here, the code will execute line by line. Okay, so it will make call out, it will wait till the response is received from the call out, and then it will continue with next operations. So why should we waste our time for waiting for the response which is not required for us right now to process other part of our code, right? So what we'll do is we will take this part of a code, this callout part, and put it into a separate method. Okay, so look into this class. What I have done is, so we have this account insert operations over here in this method, and we have created a separate method and we have put this callout part into this method. Next, we have annotated this method with future, and we have added a parameter callout equal to true to specify that in this future call there will be a callout to third party. Okay, now whenever code control will come over here, so it will insert account operation and then it will make call to this future method, and then code execution finish, and then this future method will be added in a queue and it will be executed whenever resources is available for it to execute. Okay, so we'll go to our next question. What is the return type and modifiers of future method? Now let's look at the syntax of future method. Okay, so here we have this method which is annotated with @future annotation. We call it as annotation. Okay, and next it has some parameters, so it may have different parameters based on the situation where you are going to use it. Right now I'm using it to make callout, so that's why I've added callout equal to true as parameter. Okay, look at the modifier. So it's static and the return type is void. Okay, why do we have a void return type? Because future method does not return anything. Okay, and we can even not track the execution of future method in our Apex code. Next we have why future method is static. So future method is made static so that we can access it from any class without creating or without needing to create an instance of a class. So we consider it as a utility method. Okay, what are the parameters you can pass to the future methods? Now future methods only accepts either primitive data types or list of primitive or collections of primitive data types. Okay, so it will not accept SObjects or list of SObjects and other data types. Okay, so for example, let's go to our Salesforce Developer Console, and we have a method over here. We are making call to the future methods. Let's suppose if I try to pass this account object to future method. Okay, and I'll specify it over here as account ACC. I'll try to save this code. You will see I'm getting an error, a compilation error, that future method do not support parameter type of account. Okay, so it does not support SObjects objects as a parameter. So what I have to do is I have to pass let's say string, any string, let's say account string. So I can pass that, it will accept this. Now if I try to save it, it will save this class, right? Even if I try to pass a list of string or a map of string to this future method, it will accept. Okay. Next we have, can we not pass SObject as a parameter to future method? No, we just saw we cannot pass SObjects as a parameter to future methods. Next we have, why cannot we pass SObjects to future method? Now, future methods are asynchronous and they are executed whenever system resources are available. Okay, so let's suppose if you are passing SObject to future method as a parameter, there may be a possibility that object value changes by the time future method is executed. Okay, so it will have the old values and it may override the new values of that object records, and it can mess up things, right? So that's why we cannot directly pass SObject to future methods. So how to work with SObjects in future methods if we cannot pass them as arguments? So it's very simple. Instead of passing them as an argument, you can pass the ID of this object, and later in the future method, whenever you want to work on those objects, you can just query that record, right? And work on it. So querying that record will make sure you are getting the updated record in future method and you are going to work on that, right? So instead of passing account, you can pass account ID. So what I'll do is I'll just show you how we can pass it, account.id, and here we can specify, let's say ID, account ID. Now if I try to save this, it will allow me to save this class, right? And what I can do is I can just query on this account ID, get the account record and work on it, right? It's pretty simple. What if I want to pass the current state of object instead of SObject ID to future method? Any trick you can think of it. Okay, so this question means now what we suggested, we are passing the account ID. But let's suppose I want to pass the current state of account only. I don't want to get the latest version of account record. Okay, so can I pass this account only, this with these values to this future methods so that I can work with this value only or this state of account record only? We can do that. Okay, so we know that we can pass string to our future methods, right? And we know we have a concept of serialization in Salesforce, right? So what we can do is we can serialize this account record to convert into a string and that pass that string to this future method. And then in the future method, we will deserialize that account record, right? That account string, so that it will be converted again into account object and we can work with those. But it is not recommended to do this, okay? Unless, I mean, really, it is not recommended to do this because it may mess up things. It may override the updated values on account. Just for your information, we can do that, okay? So for example, let me go here. Okay, so we have this account record. We inserted this account record. What I did is I serialized this account. Okay, I converted into string and I'm passing it as a parameter to future method. Now in the future method, I deserialized this account string using this json.deserialize and passing account class parameter here. And then I am able to get this account record. If I print over here ACC, so it will give me this account name. Okay, even in the background, if somewhere this account has been modified, those updated values won't be present with me. Okay, it will just give the current state of this account record. That's what this question was asking. Okay, how can we pass the current state of object? But it is not recommended to do this. Okay, so it's just a trick using which you can pass the current state of object. How can we call future methods? So it's very simple. Just like you call any other Apex method, you can call future methods. Okay, just specify the name and pass the parameters if required. There's no difference in that. How can we call a future method from process builder? So from process builder, we can call an Apex method, right? We can have an invocable method. So from that invocable method, we can call the future methods, just like we can call other methods, right? Consider a scenario where you are making a DML. Let's say update account record, and right after that DML, you are making a call out to external system. What will happen? Okay, so this is very important question in terms of future method. It is one of the scenarios where you can use future methods to eliminate this error. Okay, see, the scenario is when you are updating any object, let's say performing a DML operation, and just after that you are making a call out to third party. So consider this code. We have an insert account, and after that I'm making a REST call out to third party. Okay, so I have set endpoint, I have set the get method, and then I'm using send method to make the call out, right? Now what do you think? If I try to execute this method, will it run or will it give any error? Let's try this. So we'll go to our anonymous window. We will use this class name. Okay, and we'll try to execute this. Let's see what happens. You can see I'm getting an exception, system.callout exception. You have uncommitted work pending. Please commit or roll back before calling out. What does that mean is Salesforce does not allow you to make call out right after the DML operation. And there is a reason behind it. Okay, you cannot perform DML and call out in the same transaction in this order, and the reason is the callouts may take time to return the response, right? And what Salesforce will do, Salesforce has to wait till the response has been received. So Salesforce cannot just wait or hold the DML operations, as there are many triggers, process builders, and whatnot that can be triggered after a DML operations, right? So we cannot suspend the DML operations to just wait for callouts. So that's why this is not allowed. So what is the like workaround for this? Okay, how do you resolve this error? So that is our next question. So to resolve this error, there are two ways. First, you can reverse the order of this thing. Okay, if your call out is not dependent on this DML, and this is a like altogether different thing you are doing, so you can just first make the call out and then perform the DML operation. Okay, so this will work. Okay, so Salesforce will make call out, wait till response is received, and once response is received, you can proceed with your DML operations. But what if is there any other way? Yes, you can use future method also. So what you can do is you can separate this transaction. Okay, you can either put this thing into a future method, or you can put this call out into a future method. So this will make them execute in a different transactions, and it won't give you any error. Okay, so for example, consider here we have an account insert over here in this method, and I have separated this call out into a future methods. I have added annotation @future and added parameter call out equal to true, right? And we are calling future method from here. Now these call out and this DML will execute in a separate transaction, and thus it will allow us to proceed. So if I try to execute this class and this method, it will allow me to execute, and there won't be any exception over here. Okay, you can see. So next question, how can I perform callouts from future methods? So it's very easy. We have already seen it. We just have to add a parameter callout equal to true with the annotation, right? So if I go here, you can see we have to add callout equal to true, and then just like normal callouts, we just have to make our callouts. Okay. What is mixed DML error? Okay, now this is again one of the application of future methods. Okay, there are two kinds of objects in Salesforce. We have setup objects, let's say users, groups. We may also call them as a global objects, right? And we have non-setup objects, let's say account, opportunities, etc. Any custom objects or standard objects, right? So what is the scenario over here is, in a single transaction or in a single execution context, if you are performing a DML on both kinds of objects, the system doesn't allow it and throws an exception, which is nothing but a mixed DML error, stating that a transaction cannot have a mixture of DML operation. Okay, a bit different, right? So let's go to our developer console, and I'll just show you an example. Yeah, here. See, we have an account record over here, and we are performing a DML operation on account record. And after that, what I'm doing is I'm inserting an user record also. Okay, so these two are both different objects. So one is a setup and one is non-setup objects, right? Now if I try to execute this class, okay, first let's change the username. Let's save this. Now if I try to execute this class and this method, let's see what happens. Let's execute this. You can see we are getting an exception. Mixed DML operation. DML operation on setup object is not permitted after you have updated a non-setup object, right? So what is workaround for this? Workaround is to separate these objects, separate this DML into different transactions. So you can put one of them into future method and one would execute in a normal flow, right? So this will remove this error. Generally, working with test classes also, you will face this issue. So there you can separate transaction using test.startTest and test.stopTest, right? Let's see what we have next. How to resolve this error. So we have already seen that. Next is how many future methods can be defined in a class. So there is no limit to the number of future methods you can define in a class. Okay, there is no restriction on it. Can we call a future method from another future method? No. So future method cannot be invoked from another future method, not even from the batch class execute method also. Okay. Now can we trace the execution of a future method? See, tracing the execution of a future method in Apex code is not possible because that future method runs in a different transaction and it does not even return anything. Its return type is void. So there is no ID it will return. Just like for example in queue we do have an ID which it will return, but in future method does not return anything. So you cannot track the transaction of a future method in Apex code. However, you can check in Apex jobs in the setup. So if you go to the setup in Salesforce here and check for Apex jobs, there you can find asynchronous methods which have been completed. So you can see here job type is future and status is completed. We have Apex class name, we have Apex class method name also, right? And we have a job ID over here, but it won't return this ID in Apex code. Okay, so you can just monitor over here whether your feature method has been executed correctly or not. Okay, so how can we debug the feature method? So that is our next question. How can we debug the feature method? So generally when you are executing a feature method, while you are working with feature method, there will be a separate debug record created in your debug logs for its execution. Okay, and another thing is what you can do is you can just take this feature methods code and you can just execute it from anonymous window and verify whether it's executing correctly or not, and then you can annotate it with feature and work through it. Okay, can we decide the order in which feature methods executes? So no, feature methods are not guaranteed to execute in the same order in which they are called. Okay, so it is possible that two feature methods are running concurrently also, and it may result in a locking of records also if they are working on same records. So you have to be careful here while working with feature methods because it does not guarantee the order in which it will execute. Okay. How to test future methods? It's very easy to test future methods. Okay, you just have to enclose your test code between start test and stop test methods, right, in your test class. And what will happen is the system will collect all the asynchronous calls made after start test. So whatever calls, whatever number of future methods you are calling in after start test, it will collect, and whenever it will encounter stop test, it will execute those asynchronous methods synchronously. Okay. Next is, can we pass wrapper to the future methods? So we can pass the wrapper to the future methods. Only thing is we cannot pass it directly because it does not accept that. So what we have to do again is we have to convert it into a string and then pass it. Okay. So for example, consider this class. Here we have student wrapper, right? We have two parameters, first name and age, and then we are creating instance of it, and then if we pass it directly to this future methods, we have a future method here, so it will give us error that this data type is not supported as a parameter to future method, right? So what we can do is we can serialize it, convert it into string, and since string is accepted as a parameter, we can pass it over here, we can deserialize it in a future method, right? And we can work on that. So it's that simple. Can we call a future method from Apex scheduler? We can call a future method from Apex scheduler. There is no such limitation. Okay. What are the best practices for future methods? Okay. So if you are working with future methods, try to minimize the number of future methods you are using, first thing. So let's suppose if you have 3-4 callouts, try to bundle all those callouts in a single future method. Okay. Next is try to make feature method execute faster. Okay. So because whenever feature methods are encountered, they are added to the queue, right? And then other asynchronous methods are also there in the queue. So if your feature method will take more time, the other processes in a queue got like they will get delayed for their execution, right? So for that we need to keep our future method precise. We need to fine tune our queries and try to minimize the call out time also. Okay. Next is we can test our future method for scalability. So if there are really large number of records, we would suggest to go for batch classes instead of future methods. Okay. Consider a scenario where I'm calling a future method from accounts trigger and there is a batch job running on account record which performs DML on them. Okay, so will future method be invoked? Now in this scenario, even if future method is called from accounts trigger, the trigger started from the batch context, right? So that means this future method is being called from a batch context, which is not allowed. Okay, so we cannot call a future method from batch execute. We cannot call future method from another future method, right? So it will give us an error. What can be a workaround in previous question, and how can we avoid the exceptions over here? Okay, so we can do one thing. While we have written the future method call from the trigger, right? So we can wrap it around a if condition, and we will check whether the context is batch or not. So we will check if system dot is batch. Okay, and if it is batch context, we will not execute that future method. If it is not batch context, we will execute that feature method. So if in case it is a normal DML through any other scenarios, the feature method will execute. But if the context is batch, if the trigger originated from the batch insert or update operation, then in that scenario our feature method will not execute. Okay. Is there any way we can call future method from batch class execute method or from another future method? So in general, it is not allowed to do that. But if you have to use some trick, so for that what you can do is you can call a web service from a future method, and from web service you can have another future invocation. Okay, but it is not suggested to do this. What are governor limits on future methods? There are a lot of governor limits. We can discuss some of them. For example, the number of future methods you can invoke in 24-hour period, it's 250,000, or you can have a number of licenses multiplied by 200. So whichever is greater, right? And this limit is shared throughout the org with other asynchronous processes also. So queueable, batch, apex, right? All those is asynchronous process. Share that limit. And next is you can have at most 50 future calls per apex invocation. Okay, so these are important things to keep in mind. I guess these are the questions we have. If you have any questions on future methods, you can write it down in the comment section. We are happy to discuss that also. So thank you for watching this video, and do not forget to subscribe the channel.